So much fun to have him here, and it's great. Obviously, just practice, all the stuff that we're doing, trying to work against each other, different looks, different ideas, and I'm certainly looking at his eyes, saying, "Hey, scout the defense for me here. Let me know what you see. Some of maybe disguise looks, different packages," which is great because he's seen a bunch of that before, and kind of is able to speak that. But we have a lot of fun talking about old stories too, which is great. The history of the game is really important to both of us, and he's got a great history of the game, so it's fun to tell those stories back and forth. And I think what's really cool is, look, we're just so blessed and lucky to be here at Ohio State with Coach Day, who brought us both in from the NFL and kind of let us, get that joy of coaching and watching him maybe go through that a little bit of what I was experienced last year is kind of fun. It's kind of cool. I talked to him a lot actually before and during the process, just because he's such a great coach. I have so much respect for him. And I think we've gone through similar things, in our careers in the NFL, and maybe my perspective of, getting back to around a bunch of great young men and coaching and how wonderful that is, and maybe just telling them, reminding them of that a little bit was cool, I think, from that aspect of it. And then just, there's always kind of the normal questions like, hey, what's the difference between the NFL and college? What's the schedule? What's this look like? How's recruiting and all that stuff. So
Matt,
able to give them some insight there, which is good.
Yes, did you have to recount? Because those guys aren't coming back.
Yeah, no, I wish. It was good, but I'm sure they're kicking it off tonight and this weekend, so good for them. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we had like 51 new players, I think, overall on the team, and certainly with the young guys and the transfer guys, it's just a completely different group, And I think the great thing that's been interesting to watch through the course of the spring and the summer, really, is those different personalities coming from different areas, right? So whether it's, two from one school in the SEC, another from the ACC, another from the Big Ten, and just kind of watching those cultures kind of come in the building and then get on the Buckeye culture here is pretty cool. And then watch our young guys that are, that have been here really kind of emerge to lead and kind of show them the way has been really neat. Now, schematically, obviously, we're trying to figure out what everybody can do because we haven't had that development with a lot of these guys, and they've all done different things in different places. So spring was good to see it. Camp is really important right now, really, as we're working on some fundamentals and stuff to see how those schemes work with some of the fundamental techniques that these guys can actually do.
The personnel you might have helped pick for what you want?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think last year, what was cool was certainly the guys were here, we had some obviously great players. I think the biggest thing for me was figuring out what could they do, what do they do well, and how do we fit that into things scheme-wise that they can do well and play fast. I feel we're probably still in the same boat. It's just there's probably no history behind a couple years of watching them kind of grow and develop. So we have to evaluate that soon to figure out what do they do now. And yes, I think there are different skill sets on the field now than maybe what we had last year. Not better or worse, just different. So it is really trying to figure out what do they do well now.
Seems like obviously you have a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah. I do think we have a lot of flexibility, which is nice in both groups, which is great. Hopefully we can use both in those situations. It's interesting, the game of football kind of cycles through, and what was old is new and kind of vice versa. So I see a lot more of those bigger groupings coming back. So obviously the bigger the offense gets, then we have to be able to hold up to that. And so maybe the third linebacker on the field is important in that situation. And then being able to have the multiple flexibilities of DBs is good because I think that puts a lot of stress on the offense. So I do think we, have to try to figure out a way to do that as much as possible.
It felt like maybe in the spring there was more of three safeties on the field together. And from what we saw in practice, maybe it seemed like it was either a third linebacker or somebody like Jay Timmons in the slot.
Yeah.
It felt like maybe Earl was more towards the line of scrimmage at times in the preseason, less so now. Where does that stand with the potential of three safeties on the field or not?
Yeah. I think one of the things that happens for us defensively is you always have to also look at see what offensive personnel is on the field. So in some of those different groups, it could be personnel based on what we're seeing that just has that different mix of players on the field. And I think being in between, if you do have to have three safeties on the field against like a bigger personnel group, can you hold up or can you not? If you don't, then you go to bigger, obviously, personnel up front. And some of that, I think, in the back end is honestly figuring out, because there are new players on the field, what exactly are they? Are they safeties, nickels, corners. I think we're still evaluating that through the spring and trying to figure out, what are the best positions for those guys. Maybe it's just DBs. I don't know. We'll let Texas figure this out. Yeah, it's been great. I love to be around Kenyatta and certainly watching him grow. Just even from last year, getting on the field, having an opportunity to go play, watching him kind of really develop his skill set through the season. But now, giving him a whole another toolbox that I think we've built on top of what he did last year, which is really cool to watch him do that. So, look, he's obviously a great player for us. He's out of the field. He's a leader for us, and we're going to lean on him as much as we can for sure.
Last year, you have people that maybe because I can do X, Y, and Z with them, maybe it allows me to get more creative.
Last year we were really blessed to be able to do that with those guys. I think everybody knows that. I think this year, I don't know. I think we're trying to figure that out. Interesting for us this week, right? So we're in full pads finally, and we're, long practices. So this week is a heavy fundamentals week. Just getting that work in, get through the end of the week, evaluate what that looks like, and then I think, as we work towards next week, we'll start to kind of maybe mix some packages and see what that actually looks like. And the biggest thing for me when you lose the players that walked in the door last year has to be the communication. And even though the talent might be there to do it, if we can't communicate it on the field, it really doesn't matter at that point, because what we can't have is like any or a busted play. So maybe put the stress on them next week with some of that really heavy communication to see if we can do that. We'll always kind of put the stress of the communication in the middle of the defense, because obviously then it can echo out, to their side. So the linebackers sitting in the middle. Let's go start with, certainly Peyton and Christian. TJ and Riley are coming along really well there too, which is great. And some of the young guys too are stepping up. And then the safety group has to communicate. And certainly Jalen, being here under me last year, the verbiage is the same for him. And so now it's just kind of relating some of the verbiage we had last year to, hey, what do you think about this? What do you, and it was great. Last year, even with Caleb and Jalen back there, we could have these conceptual conversations. And so now it's a lot of me and Jalen having that, as we're trying to catch up those other young players and new players to the terminology. Yeah. I actually was going to look at this. I think, do we have more snaps on the field potentially this year of guys returning than we did last year? We might, right? We might from that. Yeah, this time. So I think that'll be interesting. For me, what I feel about that experience really is, okay, when we get in the game, it's going to be hopefully a lot of panic. Like you're just going to experience. I think young players or guys that haven't played a lot, the game can get pretty, it can be a lot of stress, a lot of panic in those deals. And I think what you're looking for is for a defense to be, not panic, patient, and be able to read through. So I will lean on that experience to make sure the patience is there. Schematically, though, I think it'll be whatever we feel is best on the field.
Of the old new guys,
Yep.
who's really just caught your eye? Like, I can depend on this guy.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, I'm going to lean obviously on the guys that were on the field the most last year, certainly with Jalen and KJ and Jermaine. I like where Peyton's at, in the middle of defense. He played a little bit for us last year, which was great for sure. Guys up front, we're going to have to lean on Edric and certainly Will Smith and some of those guys to be able to kind of hold up in there. So it's been good. We've actually been rotating a bunch of guys, so it's been fun.
How do you balance?
I do. I really think, especially as you kind of work through the season and gain experience by those guys, and certainly from, early in the year, you kind of try to build those reps up as you get ready for the long haul. So committee would be great. It's really hard to replace really good players in the middle of the defense. I do believe that, though. I believe it's important to be strong in the middle of the defense, and certainly coming from my background at New England and having guys like, whether it was Keith Traylor or Vince Wilfork or any of those guys, Ted Washington back in the day. I mean, those are some big boys rolling through there. So, I don't know. I think if you coach linebackers and kind of sit in that second level, the bigger those dudes are up front, the more comfortable you feel. So you like that for sure.
How do you
I would say this. I think last year was great. Those guys were unbelievable. I was, super lucky to, so much fun to be around those guys. And really the process up to the draft, post-draft, training camp, being in contact with them, talking to them through camp, and excited for them for this weekend is awesome. And I love that. I love that relationship, and I love love hearing from them, and I love having that connection with them for sure. But as far as this year, you have to move on. Every year's a new year, and you start over, and that's what we had to do. So it's really, we've moved on from last year from that as far as the Buckeyes on field. What we had, and now it's really trying to figure out what we have this year. Yeah.
So that you can feel comfortable putting Graham out there.
Yeah, I think last year, obviously, I'll take 265, 245-pound guys that were like anytime. Those are great, but we had like two, like two guys out there that we were kind of rolling. I feel, to your point, I feel like we have a good depth group that is all learning and kind of really growing at the same time. So that I think is what's really neat is that Peyton's in, TJ's in, Riley's in, Eli Leah's in, Christian's in, and I feel like, hey, we're good. Communication is good, front is good, we can play the run game. I feel like when you have those waves of players, I do think it kind of like gives you a little bit of advantage, as you go through the game. So I like where they're at. I like their progress. I like them taking ownership of the defense. That's the biggest thing, you always got to someone's got to be, in front of the huddle, and certainly linebackers do it the most. So I like that group right now. It's fun.
I'm sorry, just to follow up, do you think overall you just could play more guys this year?
Yeah, it's probably a good way to look at it. I think we have a lot of really good depth players this year. I really do. I want to make sure they're in the right spots. I want to do the best I can to make sure that I'm putting them in the right position to go make plays for sure.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, of course.